This morning I'm talking about spiritual labor. Spiritual labor is a path toward perfection. So obviously this is a little different kind of labor than what humanity in general, understands labor as being. In fact, the great sage Master Morya said something that is so important. He stated that leaders and those who always are interested for the welfare of the people must appreciate every drop of labor that people are doing. Sometimes, though, we do not appreciate the labor that is going on around and about us, for ourselves and for others. It is so important that leaders appreciate labor. Even if you are bringing just one drop of labor to meet a need, the leader must appreciate that, because it is a labor that makes life better and more beautiful. In my heart, I appreciate everybody here and anywhere else who is doing something, a labor to promote beauty, goodness, love, joy, and freedom in the world. And this is why, if we do not labor, the world cannot change. If you were here when the White Mountain Educational Group purchased its new property 3 years ago, you will remember what it first looked like. The first thing we did was to bless the property with the most sacred name of Isvara. Isvara has several spiritual meanings, starting with a master. It also means king of the mountain, as well as the Lord. You may remember that the well-known master artist and philosopher Nicholas Roark from Russia spent his childhood on an estate called Isvara. Let me share a quote from the February-March 2013 issue of Meditation Monthly International about Nicholas Roark and his early life and the beginning of his spiritual labor. This is what it says. His artistic sensitivity enhanced the beautiful images he daily perceived at Isvara. Beautiful, patterned clouds floating in the sky, migrating birds I heard going to the pasture, the mysterious distant and high mountain fields and meadows and the estate itself. The high and distant mountain was one of the sacred Himalayan mountains called Kanchenjunga. And it was here the young artist developed his artistic sensitivity. And thus we named our property Isvara. You may remember how we first gutted the building that is now our sanctuary, our temple. We removed everything, including the flooring and cabinets, the window treatments, and more. We began by sanding and scraping off all the old paint from the walls and ceilings and replacing it with the best paint possible inside the building. And I think we put in eucalyptus oil in the paint too. I'm looking at Charles, right? Okay. We also painted the outside of not only this building, but there's Fadi building and the little shed behind us. Then we put in a new driveway, which is nearly a half-mile long. We planted trees and plants and developed a meditation and memorial garden dedicated to the Master and in memory of our Vice President, who passed right after we purchased the land. Little by little, we began our reconstruction, replacing everything from the past with new and beautiful and high quality products and objects. Today, now, when I look at our temple and the temple grounds, in my heart I have a great appreciation for the labor that went into it to make everything very sacred and beautiful. If we had bought the property and the buildings and left them as they were, nothing would have changed. And we would have been very disappointed and very uninspired. Now it is sacred due to the effort that all of us put into it. So today I am talking about spiritual labor. Spiritual labor is a little different than physical labor, the labor that is going on all around us. But to define the word spiritual labor, I will say that spiritual means an ever-progressing effort to go toward perfection. It is an ever-progressing effort to go toward perfection and toward the ultimate good. This is the real labor. For some of us, spiritual labor is a vision toward what we are presently striving toward. Not everyone has such a vision. For example, a man found an eagle's egg, and he put it in the nest of the backyard hen. The eaglet hatched with a brood of chicks, and then he grew up with them. All his life, the eagle did what the backyard chickens did, thinking he was a backyard chicken. He scratched the earth for worms and insects. He clucked and he cackled, and he would thrash his wings and fly a few feet up in the air. Years passed, and the eagle grew very old. One day he saw a magnificent bird far above him in the cloudless sky. It glided in graceful majesty among the powerful wind currents, with scarcely a beat of its strong golden wings. The old eagle looked up in awe. "Who's that?" he said. "It's the eagle, the king of the birds," said his neighbor. "He belongs to the sky. We belong to the earth, we chickens." So the eagle lived and died a chicken, for that's what he thought he was. I want for all of us to be eagles, not chickens, and to soar into the higher worlds. But to be there, we must have the vision of an eagle and begin our spiritual labor. Every one of us, if we want to change our labor and reach our ultimate destination, gradually and degree by degree, we must eventually reach those levels that are superhuman. To see our dreams come true and our visions actualized, we must go through a spiritual labor. This is what discipleship is all about. Discipleship is not about movies and lunches and breakfasts and vacations and amassing material goods. Not at all. It is about spiritual labor. It is about activating our potential. It is about activating our inner life, not our outer life. Our outer life is sometimes so huge and so overwhelming and so powerful that it convinces us we have no inner life. Even if we are moral people, even if we have high values, even if we have established strong virtues, in our resumes, in our business, in our professional life, it doesn't mean that we have a rich inner life. And to have a rich inner life means to awaken the soul and then allow the light of the soul to be released. And then to live in that light every single day, every single hour, every single year, until we become self-mastered, until that self begins to flow through us. And we are no longer controlled by this massive outer world that is so distracting. Spiritual means positive efforts to change ourself, our physical, emotional, mental nature, and drive toward ultimate goodness and harmlessness. This is very real. And I think from my observation and being around on this planet for a while, and interviewing people and observing people, that it isn't until they really get into their twilight years, can I call it, that they finally realize they're dissatisfied with themselves. But it doesn't make any difference whether we're 20 or 40 or 50 or 80 or 100. There is still time to change ourselves. You know, I know it's an old axiom to say it's all in our attitude. In the teachings, we're told it's all about our thoughts. So thoughts and attitude go together. I remember many years ago studying some writings by Dale Carnegie. And he said, if you act enthusiastic, you'll become enthusiastic. That was kind of my introduction to changing myself. And I was so excited. I thought, it'll never work, but you know it did. And even when you wake up in the morning, or when I woke up in the morning and I felt like I had way too much to do with taking care of husband and children and all those responsibilities plus work, how can I wake up today enthusiastically? Change of attitude. If people were against me, how could I be enthusiastic? How could I be filled with joy? How could I have a sense of freedom from their negativity? By changing my attitude and not letting them control me. Spiritual means positive efforts to change ourselves. So I think God or hierarchy or the master or our solar angel presents us with these incredible challenges and tests to see, are we living our life according to the outer life or according to our inner world, where our soul is there, willing to release more light out into our environment, through us and out into our environment. It is like your vision changes. Your vision now becomes a sensitivity that most people don't have. That you have a psychic vision where you can see colors that have not yet been developed that can be used on canvas today. These are colors, bright colors that are in your mind and in your vision. And in this kind of seeing things, you no longer see people as ugly and negative and full of angst and hatred and malice and greed, but you see them through the light of your soul, which means you see their soul, you see their potential, you see their beauty. And as you're seeing their potential, their soul, their beauty, you're releasing more light from within your own life. It is so beautiful. This is spiritual labor. Spiritual does not mean religious. Spiritual is a different level. You can be a religious person without necessarily being a spiritual person. And this can give you some answers as to why some religions are so hateful and condemning and separative, or how some religious people are so hateful and condemning and separating. It's because they're not spiritual yet. See, their soul has not yet been born. Spiritual means a person who is taking his progress, his development, and scientifically taking it under his own hands, daily perfecting himself. That is spiritual. Isn't that interesting? That's what is spiritual. This is true for both men and women, not just women. It is also true for men. The spiritual labor I am talking about are those efforts we do to bring the ultimate beauty that lives within us into actualization. It is very beautiful if you think about it. Through this kind of labor, we prepare our physical and emotional and mental nature, and eventually create those conditions with our neighbor, or with our nature, in which the beauty that is sleeping within us finally awakens. And eventually it takes control over all of our actions and feelings and thoughts. Eventually, through that labor, listen to this carefully. Eventually, through spiritual labor, we stop being a person. Pause. We have become now a living soul, a living, capital S, soul that walks upon the earth and relates with people, truly relates with people, soul to soul, heart to heart. It says a lot about what it means to be a person. In living a spiritual life, there is no room for compromise. Awakening is not negotiable. It is not negotiable. We cannot bargain to hold on to things that please us while relinquishing things that do not matter to us. A lukewarm yearning for awakening is not enough to sustain us through the difficulties involved in letting go. It is important to understand that anything that can be lost was never truly ours. Anything that we deeply cling to only imprisons us. Anything that we deeply cling to only imprisons us. The spiritual life is to learn the joy of letting go. And this great art serves us in any circumstance. Letting go allows us to live wisely. Life is inevitably a process of letting go into greater and greater capacities of being, from infant to childhood to adolescent to adult. Letting go of our fears, for example, letting go of our fears, letting go of our habits allows a more spacious wisdom to emerge. Moving through this changing world and letting go of the beliefs, the attachments, the fixed sense of ourselves, the fixed sense of ourselves. I don't want you to miss anything. Bring your minds back, okay? The fixed sense of ourselves, one day at a time, letting this go, one day at a time, is to travel with a graceful and spacious heart. One day, Mara, the Buddhist god of ignorance and evil, was traveling through the villages of India with his attendants. He saw a man doing a walking meditation whose face was lit up in wonder. The man had just discovered something on the ground in front of him. Mara's attendants asked what that was, and Mara replied, "A piece of truth." "Doesn't this bother you?" his attendants said, "when someone finds a piece of truth?" "Oh, evil one?" His attendants shook their head in disbelief. They could not understand Mara's thinking. But then Mara said, "No. Right after this, they usually make a belief out of it." Right. Letting go of the beliefs, the attachments, the fixed sense of ourselves, one day at a time, is to travel with a graceful and spacious heart. To release the old is to allow the new to be born. This is spiritual labor. To repeat what I said, eventually, through spiritual labor, we stop being a person. We become a living soul that walks upon the earth and relates with people. But labor does not end there. The teaching explains that there is a very subtle side of it. In spiritual labor, we try not only to organize our vehicles, our life, in such a way that the seed within us blooms and unfolds, but also we organize our life in such a way that other people, because of our existence, start organizing their life in such a way that eventually their own beauty starts shining in the world. This is what it means when our soul releases more light from within us out into the outer world. When that happens is when then that light ignites the beauty, releases the beauty from others, and they too start shining in the world. If you are becoming a beautiful person, a beautiful soul, a beautiful, radioactive, creative being, but all around you, people are not developed. People are at animal levels, involved with crimes and violence and gangs, then you cannot build a beautiful life. When a woman is going into labor, she is going to bring a baby into the world. That is such a beautiful moment in her life. That is her labor. What is our labor? The baby within us is waiting for millions and has been waiting for millions of years to come into existence. The teaching says most of us do not exist. The womb is there. Who is the womb? We are the womb. Each one of us is a womb. The baby is there, but it is 10,000 years, 10 million years, 18 million years that the baby, your divinity, has not been born yet. That is what we are talking about with the labor. The baby is your divinity, the spark that is planted within us by higher powers, the seed that is within us, within everybody, must manifest. So, spiritual labor is to prepare the room for the baby, to prepare those conditions in which the baby will come and actualize his talents or her talents. That is what we do when we have a baby. For example, we created a temple. That was our vision. Our baby that was in the process of birth. People, students helped in every way so that our vision came into actualization. It took 32 years of being pregnant. Imagine. But imagine our joy at the birth. So you are going to do the same thing. You are going to help others in every way possible so that their divinity comes into actualization. The creativity, the talents of other people must have proper expression, and you must help them in this process and never be a hindrance. Try to help in a way that gives birth to your beauty, but also helps others to have their birth even before you, so that you do not develop pride and stupidity or a glamour that you are something and others are not. The teaching says spiritual labor has 3 rounds. So now we're getting a little bit more specific and definite here. These 3 rounds are things that we ourselves can practice and to be. The first one is that if you really want to improve, do not waste your time. So now we're in the days of the Vesak full moon, which will be next Sunday. Don't waste your day today. Don't waste your coming days. Don't waste your time. Engage in spiritual labor and all that I've said here today. Sometimes a person will pay $10,000 to have fun. Go on Carnival cruises and let your boat sink. Sorry. Give that $10,000 to make your baby be born, because there is no time to lose. There is no energy to be lost. If you think what happened in Nepal cannot possibly happen here, you are delusional. If you think you're immortal but haven't built the bridge yet, you have no time to waste. It is time that you seriously think about what the most important thing in the world is. The most important thing in the world is to give birth to your divinity. At the time when you are dying, how will you feel? Many will feel lost, that their life was lost or wasted. But don't feel that way. Before you die, you're going to be able to say, well, actually, I am 6 months pregnant now with this baby. Another life, I will give birth to it. At least feel the pregnancy of the baby filled with that spiritual glory that is on its way of manifestation. Now, the first steps of the first round is to be aware of your actions, aware of your behavior, aware of the way you walk and move, and so forth, without hating what you do or do not do. Then the next step is observation. We're going to learn the secret of observation. In fact, we have a course on observation. If you don't know what observation is, take the course. It will help you loosen your identification with your body, emotions, and mind. And you are already halfway to your destination. The second round, so we've gone from the first round, which is to watch and to be aware of ourselves. Now we're going to observe again, but without criticism. So we're going from action, being aware of our actions, observing our actions, and now we're going to observe our actions without criticism, but with appreciation of your actions. Immediately while you act, you are going to correct your negative action. See, no criticism here. No self-condemnation. You're just saying, okay, I see this, and now I'm going to change this negative action, this destructive action, into something positive. We're injecting a little improvement into our action for the first year, the second year, the third year, or the first hour, second hour, third year. Depending on your advancement, it does not matter. But now is the time to change. In the Middle East, when they see each other, they say, "Hi, didn't you die yet?" I know. Well, that's their expression. But we can instead say, "Wow, how beautiful you look." So put that in your mind, that your labor is to provide the conditions in you and in others so that the greatness that is latent in you and in them will manifest. Sometimes I've experienced you almost have to go to battle with that person when you say, "You are so beautiful," and they say, "You're being supercilious, right? You don't mean that, right? I'm not beautiful, I'm ugly. Why are you talking to me like that?" I remember in a counseling sessions many, many, many years ago, and I truly saw this person as absolutely profound, creative, talented, and she was an artist. She absolutely would not listen to what I said. That you are so beautiful, you are so talented, you are so creative. She could not change her attitude, and she got cancer and died. Imagine the pain that it caused me, that I could not help her change her attitude. Who knows why, people look so negatively to themselves. But that's not our job, to try to figure out why. Our job is to try to reflect their beauty because of their divinity. That's our job. The third round or stage of spiritual labor is when you are involved in any physical action in this round, you are going to consider if that action is hurting your health, your physical, emotional, or mental body. Okay, this is synthesis, or what we call integration. How do we integrate these three bodies? The teaching, we have lots of books, lots of chapters, lots of words that talk to us about the importance of integration. It says without integration, we cannot build the first bridge of awakening, that first bridge of communication with the higher self or with the solar angel. We must be integrated. How do we integrate ourselves? By changing ourselves. In this third round, to observe and to consider, is any action, physical, emotional, mental action, hurting my health and preventing integration? or preventing synthesis. If you are involved in any emotional action, you are going to consider if that emotional action is going to hurt your body, your physical body or your mental body. Let me say this again so you get the next paragraph. Okay? If you are involved in any emotional action, okay, emotional action, what's on the other side of the emotional body? We have the physical body, right? And we have the mental body. So we're going to consider if that emotional action is going to hurt our physical body. Is it going to hurt our mental body? If we are involved in any mental action, we're going to ask, is this action going to hurt my physical life? Is it going to hurt my mental life? Is my attitude going to hurt my physical body? Is it going to shrink and freeze my emotional body? If it is hurting, there is no coordination, balance, harmony, and cooperation between these three bodies. In these three rounds lie the definition of spirituality, the definition of labor and relations within your life and relations with others. The first round is action-observation. The second round is observation-changing yourself. And the third round is integration or synthesizing. When we engage in spiritual labor is the day we realize that we are going to work upon ourselves. We're going to become conditioning factors for others to have their spiritual rebirth, their spiritual transformation. It is not to force them, like I could not force my dear friend, who was so beautiful and could not accept it. It is not for us to criticize them or to hate them, but to be conditioning factors with your life, with your examples, with your beauty, with your light, with your health, with your assistance. So I was called in, in her last few minutes of life. Drove from Sarasota up to St. Petersburg to be with her. And her last words were, I love you. So I can't help but believe that I did, in some sense, that light helped her in her transition. We are letting them see and say, that is enough now. I lived as an animal. Now is the time to be human and divine. The moment you labor to give birth, you enter the spiritual path. But to be fully spiritual, you must be three things. 1, you must make others spiritual. 2, never be an obstacle on the spiritual path of others. And number 3, destroy continuously all mental and emotional limitations. In religion, it is the church that tries to move you on. In spirituality, it is your inner divinity that moves you on. In religion, you are confined to your religious borders. In spirituality, you have no borders, no limitations. You belong to all religions without being a member of any one. You can see the oneness of all of them and never use it to attack any one of them. If your actions, emotions, and thoughts originate consciously or unconsciously from fear and anger and hatred, jealousy, revenge, slander, or from greed, ego, vanity, self-interest, ugliness, your actions, feelings, and thoughts will not only be negative, but they're going to be destructive. If you check all your physical, emotional, and mental actions against this list, you are going to be well on your way to victory, health, happiness, and success. You will walk as a spiritual being. You will walk as a special lighted being, healthy, pure, successful, victorious. Your spiritual labor will be productive. And finally, you will see that you gave birth to the divinity with which you were pregnant millions of years. That's it. So that's spiritual labor.